Howdy, my name is Nick Taylor. First, I'd just like to thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to speak in front of you all. Before I get into my story and what I've been able to, been fortunate enough to accomplish, I want to tell you a quick story from my childhood that I feel is very important because it encompasses really who I am and how I've gotten to the point that I have. So, a summer morning, I was about 5 years old, and it was a summer morning, and I woke up because when I woke up, I was very excited because I knew that it was a day I was going to get to go swimming. And for me, at 5 years old, really nothing beat getting to go swimming other than maybe going fishing, because that was my other favorite thing to do. So I called my dad, telling him that I was awake, and he came in the room, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Nick, are you ready to go swimming?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay." And he had the swimsuit in his hand, and he threw it to me, and he goes, "When you get this on, we'll go swimming." And he turned around and he walked out of the room. Now, for some people, you might be, thinking, well, is that really that big a deal at 5 years old? And for most 5-year-olds, no, putting their swimming suit on is no big deal. For me, it was a big deal. I had never done that before. I didn't really know how to do it, and honestly, I didn't think I could do it. So I laid there and I cried and I screamed and I was upset and I didn't understand what my dad was doing. And I kept hollering for him, but he didn't come back in the room. And eventually I laid there long enough, and when you're 5 years old, 10 minutes could feel like 3 hours. I don't know, to this day, I don't know how long I was there. But I was there long enough that I finally figured out the only way I was going to go swimming was if I put that swimsuit on. So I started working and wiggling and wrestling, and eventually, somehow, I got the swimsuit pulled up. And then at that point, I yelled to my dad, "Dad, it's on." He came in, didn't make a big deal out of it, said something like, "See, I knew you could do it." And that was that. Went swimming that day. I tell you that story because without my dad and about 1,000 other people that pushed me through my life, I would not have been able to accomplish what I have in the sport of tennis, in life, in school, nothing. Because the greatest way to tell me that to get me to do something is to tell me at this point in my life, the greatest way to get me to do something is to tell me that I can't do it. So if you tell me I can't do something, I'm probably going to try to do it just to prove you wrong. And I could tell you countless stories of, from teachers, family, parents, that have tried, that have used that against me per se, and even to the point where I do it to myself. I'd sit there and tell myself, "Nick, there's no way you can pull that off," just to get myself to go ahead and challenge myself and do it. So at this point, before I start talking about my tennis career and how that started, I do want to just give you some basic information about myself. As I said, my name is Nick Taylor, born and raised right here in Wichita, Kansas. I'm 41 years old. I am the director of operations for the men's tennis team here at Wichita State, and I also am a sport management instructor here on campus. And I also put on events such as the Wichita Tennis Open, which is a men's professional tennis tournament, along with a lot of events for disabled youth and disabled adults. So I do a variety of different things. I'm also on about 100 different committees for the sport of wheelchair tennis and the sport of tennis in general. I do have 2 bachelor's and a master's from here at Wichita State, with the master's being in sport management, which is why I teach in sport management. At this point, I think I'll explain my disability a little bit. It is called arthrogryposis. I joke usually when I'm in front of a group of kids, as I always tell them that there's going to be a spelling bee at the end of my speech and that they have to spell that. Obviously that's a joke, but it is a very rare birth defect, so I've had my disability since I was born. Basically the way to describe it is I'm not able to walk, so I utilize a power wheelchair, as you can see. And then in my upper body, examples are, I have the ability to close my hand, so you can see my hand closing on my tennis racket, but I can't open my hand. I don't have the muscles really to be able to open it, so it's pretty tight against the racket. I can let go enough to get the racket out of my hand, but even that is, can be a little bit tricky. I can't raise my arms up above my head. I can't really raise my arms up above higher than what I'm doing right there. And then, like I said, I utilize a power wheelchair. for daily living and to get around. At this point, I think I'll kind of get into my tennis career and how I've, where it all started and where it's been. So going into, when I was in 8th grade in middle school, I went to Truesdale Middle School, and I really started thinking about how bad I wanted to play a sport in high school. And I really started thinking about it. My first thought was soccer, because that was my first love. I grew up from the time I was 2 years old, going to Wichita Wings games. I was a season ticket holder for Wichita Wings games all the way until they weren't around anymore. I'm sure some people listening to this will know who I'm talking about when I talk about Wings, and some of you younger ones might look at me like you're a little like, who? But they were a professional indoor soccer team. So I wanted to play soccer, but that very quickly realized that just wasn't really going to work in a power wheelchair. The safety of that for both myself, but more so the people I'm playing against. My joke is always, who's going to slide tackle a 300-pound piece of metal? So it quickly became, through a process of elimination, it got down to either tennis or golf. Why I chose tennis to this day, I still don't know. I had never played tennis. No one in my family really played tennis. So I'm going to demonstrate now for you what it looked like when I first played tennis. Yeah, one more. So as you can see, I'm just kind of bunting the ball. And that's really all I could do. I had someone throwing the ball to me like I just did there, and I would basically just bump it right back to them. I could hit the ball maybe 5 feet if I was lucky. And I hit against the garage door. Started doing that. I then got to West High School, and I always tell the story that I was scared to go ask the football coach if I could play on the tennis team. And instead, I told all of the teachers in the school that I really wanted to play on the tennis team, to the point where they went and told him, and he came and asked me. So I ended up making the team at West High School my freshman year. And back then, they are actually very good now at West High, but back then we were not good. We were very, very, very bad. And when I say I made the team, if I had a slideshow in front of me, this would be I would have quotations marks around the word made, because made meant saying, hey, I want to play tennis, and therefore you were on the team, because there wasn't hardly anyone on the team. So again, I didn't know wheelchair tennis existed. I only knew that I was going to go play high school tennis against kids running around on 2 legs, and I was going to try to play against them. About a month into the season, the number 1 player in the world showed up in Wichita, Kansas to do a clinic. And you can talk about a lot of things, fate or whatever word you want to use, but I can tell you that is the one and only time, other than the fact that I live here, that the number 1 wheelchair tennis player in the United States has ever been in Wichita, Kansas at any given time. And he showed up a month into my high school season. And I had a couple friends come up and tell me. I didn't believe them. I thought they were lying. I didn't know wheelchair tennis existed. And I eventually went and looked in the paper, and sure enough, there they are. There it is in the paper. He's coming. So I went from the typical, I turned into then a typical 14-year-old boy that 10 minutes before I didn't think wheelchair tennis existed, to finding out wheelchair tennis existed and that the number 1 player in the world was going to be here to do a clinic. And that's when I turned into the typical 14-year-old boy, thinking I was going to show up and beat the number 1 player in the world, because how in the world could someone else in a wheelchair be as good as tennis as I was? Keep in mind, I couldn't even hit the ball over the net if I was behind the baseline, because I wasn't strong enough. So I went to that clinic, and for the next 4 years, I kept playing high school tennis, and I kept hitting against a wall every single day. Really, I should backtrack for a second. In that time, from making the decision that I wanted to play tennis to making the high school team, I spent hours and hours and hours doing what I just showed you, where somebody would bounce the ball and I would bump it to them. But eventually, I ran out of people to stand and throw the ball to me. So for the amount of hours that I needed to do. So I learned how to hit against a garage door and go from there. And I think I should demonstrate at this point, one of the problems that I had, why somebody had to pick the ball up so long for me, was because I couldn't get the ball off the ground. And I learned how to do this pretty early on, and that was to pick the ball up with my foot like I just did, and then flip it up, and then I'm not going to hit it because I'm inside a building, and then hit it. And to this day, that is still how I serve. I'm the only tennis player in the world that serves that way. But that was just kind of an evolution that happened. And, sometimes, people are like, well, how in the world did you learn how to do that? And, I could make it out like it was a long, drawn-out process, but it really wasn't. It was pretty natural for me. And again, going back to my love for soccer and juggling and playing hacky sack and stuff, it was pretty natural for me. So anyways, sorry I had to backtrack. I think the other story I want to tell you real quick, and then we'll move on. A lot of times people ask me in the beginning, why did you keep doing it? If you were so bad, if you could only hit a ball 5 feet, why did you keep going? And for many years, I didn't know the answer to that question. But I finally figured it out about 10 years ago that at that point in my life was when I was hitting against that door every day, it was a very, very, very bad time in my life. I was told that my father was going to die within 6 months. That was during my 8th grade year. He had brain lesions. They didn't know why, and he was going to die within 6 months. So not only was I losing my father, but he was the one that took care of me every day and helped me with all the daily living tasks that I do need help with, because I need help with pretty much everything in terms of daily living. And that was obviously very hard for any teenage boy to go through, but even more for me because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I think going and hitting against that garage door was an escape for me. And I actually, when I finally allowed myself to remember it, I realized that the amount of times that I would go out there and I'd be in tears when I was hitting against the wall. And I was so angry that I would hit the ball harder. And I think that, to take out frustration. And then when I would do that, I think I just continually got stronger. Now, I do need to put this in because sometimes I forget. The doctors were wrong. My dad is still alive. He has a lot of health issues, but he is still alive. And up to just a couple of years ago, he was still traveling with me to every tournament I ever went on. So I want to fast forward a bit through my career. At this point now, I've been fortunate enough to go to 4 Paralympic Games, Athens, Beijing, London, and Rio, winning a gold in those first 3 and a silver in Rio. My joke is always that I don't talk about Rio because we lost the gold medal match, and so I don't like talking about it. But throughout my career, I've hit #1 in the world in both singles and doubles at different times. I've been fortunate enough to win 11 Grand Slams. I've won the US Open 7 times. I've won the Australian Open 4 times, along with 200 plus other titles from all over the world. I have traveled to every continent but Antarctica. I don't know that I probably will ever go to Antarctica. I don't think it's overly wheelchair accessible. But other continents I've been to a ton. I've been to 40 plus countries. When people ask me to try to count them, I've been to 40 plus countries, and I've been to pretty much every single state in the United States. So I want to go back for those of you that were able to, at this point I want to explain something, then I'll go back. So at this point I want to apologize for not being able to be live with you all today. The reason I'm not able to be live is because I'm going to Turkey for tournaments to try to qualify for my last Paralympic Games in Tokyo. And these tournaments, because of the pandemic, most tournaments have been canceled. These tournaments are happening, and this is really my absolute last shot. So I am going to be, while you're watching this video, I will be in the air traveling from Amsterdam to Turkey, where I'll be playing several events, and then from there I'll be going on to Israel. But to go back, for those of you that saw my teaser video, when I was asked to say what my favorite place in Wichita was, I chose a little bit of a different place. I said the baggage carousel at the airport. And the reason that I said that was because if I'm at the baggage carousel, I know that I'm coming back to Wichita, and I'm coming back to my friends and my family and the city that I love so much. So I get asked a ton when people hear how much I travel. They ask me, what is your favorite place? And I give this exact same answer every single time: Wichita, Kansas. And that is the honest truth. I was born and raised here, went to Wichita State, as I said. I have a very deep connection with Wichita. I feel like the people here are amazing. They're very friendly. They're very accepting of my disability. The city is, from an accessibility point of view, there's really nowhere in the city that I can't go if I want to go. And I can't say that about, certainly not places around the world. And even other states, it's just not as good. And part of that's the geography. We're a little flatter, buildings aren't as tall, so you're not having to worry about as many elevators. But it's also just the mindset here in Wichita. Everybody always wants to do everything they can to help. So, in terms of some of my favorite things to do in Wichita, I mentioned growing up that I was a season ticket holder for the Wichita Wings. I did that. I've been a season ticket holder for the Wichita Thunder, clear back from the mid-90s to this current day. I live and breathe Wichita State. I'm here pretty much 10 hours a day. Anytime I'm at home, either helping with the tennis team, teaching class, working out at the Heskett Center. Another big part of Wichita that I love is I eat out way more than I should, pretty much every meal. And I just love all of the different restaurants in Wichita and all the different varieties that you can go to. So at this point, we're gonna take a little walk here outside, and I'm gonna do a quick demonstration. If you could grab another ball too, please. And what I want to show you is, in the beginning, I showed you that I could only hit a ball 5 feet. At this point, I want to show you what a great deal of work, years and years of work, have turned into. So again, from the beginning, I could only hit a ball 5 feet. Now, whoops. That was a little embarrassing. I can assure you that doesn't happen very often, that I miss a toss. I couldn't tell you the last time that happened, but anyways, I did. So I'll take another ball, please. So again, just, imagine me being able to only hit a ball 5 feet, and I can now, send a ball hundreds of feet. And that came from years and years and years of work and years of hitting on the garage door and hitting against a ball machine and against everybody and their brother that would ever hit with me. So to close out, I want to ask you this question. My career began by hitting against a garage door, and it ended, or not ended, but got to winning gold medals. So my question to you is, what is your garage door and what is your gold medal? Meaning, the gold medal is the goal. What do you want to do? The garage door is, how are you going to get there? And there's a lot of garage doors, I assure you. It's not just one. There's 100 different things that you may have to do to get to that goal. But you can apply that to whatever you want to. Lastly, I want to finish by saying, again, I apologize that I'm not there with you all live. And I understand that I can't be there for the question and answer. But if you do have any questions, things you want to tell me, any comments, or anything you want to ask me, please feel free to reach out to me via email. My email is nickryantaylor, all just straight out, no dots, anything, nickryantaylor@yahoo.com. Thanks so much and have a good day.